Good morning and welcome to Eyes on Books. My name is Jonathan Williams. I'm here today with my co-host, Susan Wheeler. We're going to have a good time talking about the book, The Girls of Good Fortune.
Indeed we are. It was quite a read.
It was quite a read. I must begin by telling you, Susan, I don't ordinarily choose books like this right off the shelf to read. I'm more of a rip-roaring adventure kind of reader.
Well, I bet you were pretty surprised by this then.
Exactly. I was quite surprised. It is a rip-roaring adventure, as I told you earlier, with a modicum of romance.
That's true. Well,
which is
A
good.
little more than modicum, but...
Okay, you said so, yes.
Okay.
A little bit more than a modicum. It's a good story. I think that the title is a little uncertain. The Girls of Good Fortune. Wasn't sure quite what to make of it, but what I realized is you can make your own fortune.
Well, that's true. And you can be lucky.
You can be lucky and you can be determined. Okay,
That's true.
So for our viewers, the story revolves around a character named Celia, who is mixed race. She has a Chinese father and a Anglo or white mother. And the story begins when she is in service in the home of a wealthy family. But boy, where the story goes from there, you would never guess.
It is so true. Talk about the opening chapter.
Well, in the beginning, which part of it?
Well, the opening chapter, when she wakes up in a tunnel in the dirt. There's dirt in her face. She doesn't know where she is. She is just kept in a cell or something. She doesn't know. And she's dressed in disguise. She's dressed like a boy.
It is remarkable. It's true. The author uses a device, if I may say, of telling the story in the years 1885 and 1888.
Right.
And what transpires between those dates. And, oh my goodness, it is quite a story. So it starts off, as you describe, in that cell.
In 1888, in Portland.
Oh, that's true. We have to say that. It's in Portland, in a time when Portland was quite a bustling city, as I understand, with, it's part of the Gold Rush era, too.
Yes, it's all related to that. In the late 1800s, the gold rush in 1849, we all know that, how so many Chinese people immigrated to the West Coast to be part of the gold rush, and also to build the railway that was being built.
I knew about the railroads. I didn't know about the gold rush. That was news.
Right, but this takes place in Portland, in the tunnels of Portland, which was new to me.
Very new.
And they call them the Shanghai tunnels.
So we should give a little bit of background. We're going to bring the author in shortly, so you get to meet her, and she'll tell us a good deal more about it.
Right.
But it is historical fiction,
Right.
I think is the genre.
It is, but it's based on these kind of kernels of truths, being the Portland-Shanghai tunnels and the racial discrimination against the Chinese, and massacres and atrocities that took place.
That's the story that we're going to learn about today.
Yes.
We're going to learn how this mixed-race person who you wouldn't think would have much opportunity or much of a future. Well, the end of the book, I don't want to give this away, but the end of the book, when relatives are looking back from modern times to those early years, what an astonishing story. What an amazing success. The whole book reminded me very much of, what is America? We are all so many diverse stories. I enjoyed learning about that. It reminded me, especially from the perspective of today, we're not all one kind of people.
That's so true, so true. And this is a very rich history that she's tapped into that I think it really has not been covered by other writers. The atrocities that were committed against the Chinese. I mean, we're all aware of the Tulsa, what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the race riot, the horrible things that happened. This is quite similar what happened to the Chinese. And the whole story of the Chinese immigration and the impact they had on this country, the Chinese Exclusion Act, where they were not allowed to come into the country after a while. I mean, you're right, it's a whole separate bit of our history.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to the author. I have a lot of questions for her. It's an exciting story.
Well, it is. It felt like a bit of a madcap adventure that was based on these, gritty truths.
I know I'm in kind of a good story when I want to yell at the character. There are times in the story where Celia, who's remarkable in so many ways, but I want to yell at her sometimes. Don't do that, Celia. Take the deal. You're okay.
Right.
She's so determined to seek and achieve justice in some areas. I want to tell her, just don't do that.
I know.
Okay, we're going to talk more about.
But she's strong-willed, resilient, and she
amazing. I also
slept through it all.
Right. I also am very much drawn to stories where women help each other succeed.
It is indeed about not just Shanghai tunnels and the atrocities against the Chinese, but it's about motherhood as well. And they'll delve very deeply into that. And you end with a good feeling at the end of the book.
Right, and if you want straight up adventure, misadventure, daring do, your rescues, betrayals,
Perils
all that
of
stuff.
Pauline.
Oh yes, it's all there.
It is.
It's all there.
Okay.
Sit back and enjoy the ride.
Let's bring on the author.
Bring on the author.
So now we're ready to meet the author herself. Christina McMorris, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. My name is Susan, and with me is Jonathan. And we are so happy to have you with us and anxious to hear about this book. But a few words about you. You are a best-selling author who has written, eight other novels. Is that correct?
Right. This is my 8th novel.
This
That's
is your
correct.
8th novel.
12th or 13th book.
Oh my gosh, really?
You're successful.
You're well-read. You've won awards, and we'd like to hear more about. First, we'd like to hear a little bit more about the book itself. And Jonathan, you were going to start with some of that.
Well, it's a remarkable story. Earlier, before you came on, we did a bit of a discussion about how we enjoyed the book, some of the aspects of the book that were outstanding, but we didn't want to give away too much. We didn't want to tell very much of the plot. We introduced the character of Celia, and we introduced the idea of some of the themes like motherhood and adventure.
But more than that, the Shanghai tunnels and the atrocities and with the anti-Chinese groups and all of that. So your book is based on so much history. And it's interesting, I find it interesting that those kernels of history that you have pulled out, the Shanghai tunnels, we'll talk a little bit about the Shanghai tunnels. How did that, the inspiration come to you to write about them?
Right. Well, what's really funny is that I am from the Portland area since I was a baby. And so you would think I would know about the tunnels right here in downtown Portland. Somehow, most of my life, I did not know about them until a friend mentioned it because of a ghost hunting show.
Oh, right.
So I joke that is where authors apparently get all our best ideas. And because of that, I learned more about them. I went down the rabbit hole of research. I went on the tour to see the tunnels myself. I was fascinated by all of it. And the more that I learned about the tunnels and about just being Shanghai at the time, of course, we know that today is a colloquialism for being kidnapped, but
right.
Most people, like myself back then, don't know where that term comes from. And in the late 1800s, Portland was considered the Shanghai capital of the world.
Oh my.
And that another word for being Shanghai at the time was being crimped or crimping. And this entails, of course, as you know from reading my story, a sailor or just an able-bodied man who would come into town, come into port, drink some drugged ale in a corrupt saloon, and then wake up on a ship at sea. Now, this could be because they theoretically or allegedly sometimes dropped through a trap door in the floor into a cell that was underground in the tunnels, or it could just be from, being taken into the tunnels or just taken straight to the ship. Either way, they would wake up on a ship at sea, they would say, and be told that they were sold as forced labor to a short-handed captain. So at that point, they had two choices. One was to either work their way off all the way to a destination, they would say as far away as Shanghai and back, which would be a 3-year round trip, incidentally. Or they could refuse and be tossed overboard as a drain on resources. So
What a
I found all
choice.
of that fascinating, and the more I learned about the tunnels, of course, with having opium dens down there, illegal gambling halls, all kinds of interesting things, where the tunnels led all the way to the port. And I'll just mention briefly, since I didn't explain that, they would say that the tunnels were either built as a way to smuggle opium into port because there was such a high tax on the opium at the time, or also used to transfer goods very efficiently from the ships that were below street level.
I
So if you
see.
go straight into the tunnels,
Right.
you could drop off your goods at basement to basement in a gridded system under the city.
Right.
Wow, what an interesting history. What drew you to this particular story? Its story centers on a very unique character, a woman named Celia. And its story is all really her story.
Yeah, well, what drew me to that character and writing her, of course, was personal reasons, in that I thought it would be fascinating to write about a woman who, like myself, is biracial. She is the daughter of an Asian immigrant, same as me. In her case, her father is a Chinese immigrant. Mine is a Japanese immigrant. My father's from Kyoto originally. And I remember as a kid not knowing exactly where I fit in, straddling two cultures and sort of struggling with identity for a time. And I thought this would be interesting through that lens. However, during a time that is extremely anti-Chinese, and to have her passing as white during that time period, I thought would add another element of interest, of a struggle with identity and culture, and also the shame of having, a Chinese father and having that blood in her, like her heritage in her as well, but also wanting to be proud of herself and her father, and that struggle of figuring out where she belongs.
Well, she was quite an interesting character and set in that background, but adding the anti-Chinese aspect to it, the racism that was going on at the time, and the dreadful massacres that you write about that had not really been written about much before. I mean, this was eye-opening to many people, well, as were the tunnels. Many people had not heard of that, but it's the massacres that were truly eye-opening, and I think you've maybe given a gift to everyone writing about them. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about what happened. What was it? I can't remember, the Hells Canyon one in Oregon specifically, and why people were so anti-Chinese. Why were they?
Well, at the time, when I was writing the story, I was about to start writing it, and I was researching the tunnels. It led me down a research path where I discovered something called the Rock Springs Massacre in Wyoming. The quickest way to describe this in shorthand is to say that it is like the Tulsa Massacre against the Chinese at the time. So involving, without going into too much detail, involving a mob that descended on Chinatown in broad daylight, burned it to ashes, murdered quite a few people, injured many more, and no white person would come forward and testify, and no Chinese person was allowed to testify at the time. And so because of this, the grand jury could not indict, and everyone walked free. Now, this is not much of a spoiler here, because this is a very, very small part of the story, and that it, how it is mentioned. From there, though, I mentioned this to a friend, and I thought, how did I not know about this before? And she said, well, you do know about the Hells Canyon Massacre, right? Right here in Oregon. And now, that was shocking because, of course, it's my home state, and I was stunned I hadn't heard about it before. I went down that rabbit hole of research, of course, and discovered, without going into much detail there, as you all know from reading the story, involves 7 horse thieves who, we'll just say, kind of camped out, surrounded some Chinese encampments that were gold dust miners in a very remote part of northeastern Oregon. And we'll just say that the gold and the miners disappeared. And the resulting court documents from that were actually kept in a safe in the Wallowa County Clerk's office for more than 100 years, separate from the rest of the archives. So it seemed to be that they really did want this kind of forgotten to history. And it was not until 1995 that the safe was donated to a county museum. And because of this, the documents came to light.
Wow, so there's a lot of historical information in the book. But what really made the book, for me, important and enjoyable is the character, Celia. What a remarkable person. Throughout tell us a little bit about that character. I really enjoyed her. I typically am more interested in rip-roaring stories, if you will, but in a way, this is exactly that. That's what surprised me. It's a rip-roaring adventure. There's so many episodes, so many dire moments. I want to tell Sylvia, don't do that. Take the deal. Move away. But my goodness,
Absolutely.
she is so determined and so
she is.
strong
Right.
and remarkable in so many ways. What a character.
Thank you. It
There's
was very.
I described to Suzanne, I thought it was a rip-roaring adventure with a modicum of romance, which was good.
I felt there was a bit more than a modicum of romance, though. But it was a remarkable background that you had set for this amazing story of adventure story. I mean, the tunnels,
Yeah.
the massacres, and then this adventure, this wild adventure of this woman, strong-willed woman, working her way through this.
But she doesn't do it alone. She's
Oh,
got some other
absolutely
women
not.
with her
That's
that
right.
make it possible for her to succeed.
Yeah. And in the end, it's all about motherhood and family, and you end with recipes for cookies at the end of. It goes in a big circle, but it's a really engrossing adventure, almost like the perils of Pauline, where you have her doing one thing to another. But when you think that it's told in dual timelines. I mean, 1888. And is when she has this incident begin, and she's trying to recall how she got into this situation that started in 1885. So we learn a lot of her real life, her backstory, how she really ended up in that position, and what took her on this wild adventure to get back to her family and her loved ones. And some of your other characters were just so interesting. Maria, Marie, the madam from the brothel, and Letty, very rich characters. So Maria was, I loved her. Was she based on something? Where did this character come from?
Sure. I'd love to chat about her. And I will say thank you for enjoying Celia and her adventures so much. Before I talk about Marie, I'll just add that what was fun about writing Celia, well, first of all, you're absolutely right in kind of reframing it through a different lens and what's realistic. Because if you think back in history, we know from nonfiction books and also novels that there are women who served in the Civil War disguised as men, that even became officers and were not discovered until their passing. There were also, if you think of the story Mulan, and a woman who would serve with the Japanese
Of course.
military, for example, or fight as a samurai. And we know those things actually did happen. So I know that bits and pieces of that are, of course, inspired by history. Plus, the framing of my story with the prologue and the epilogue, as you both know, the reason why the story is told in third person, I originally wrote it in first person, all through Celia's point of view. It was when I was almost finished with the book that I decided to put the prologue and the epilogue, which are really important to framing the story from a woman that is several generations down in the family, and about the importance of Chinese folklore and the telling of the stories through generations. The same way, because I'm on the West Coast, how we refer to talk story from the Hawaiians is the same with the importance of Chinese storytelling. And so I say that my grandma, on my Irish side, she used to say that she never measured anything when she baked and cooked. She said it was all with bagash and bagali. It was a little sprinkle of this, a little sprinkle of that. And that is what I mentioned in my epilogue as well. So I wrote it from third person. I changed it all because I realized this was a story that was told through the family. And so it's going to get a little more adventurous and, more interesting as it passes down through the generations. And yet there is truth at the center of all of it.
Of course.
I
Now, that
found
being
the
said,
end of the
let's see here. Madame Marie was absolutely one of my favorite characters to write. She was so much fun. She was partially inspired by two of my Japanese aunties. So one of them, speaks.
Do they know
very,
that?
What was that?
Do they know that they inspired?
No, they don't. I'm actually going to see them at Christmas time. My dad and both my boys who are both in college, the four of us are actually going to go to Japan for Christmas this year. My boys have not been back there. I haven't been back, I guess, since them too, in many years. So this will be very fun. So you're absolutely right in that I need to tell them, and good to tell them that they made a good character, right? They didn't make a
Yes,
villain.
a wonderful, wonderful, loving character. Yes.
She is. I love her. And so I've got one auntie who speaks with broken English, who I find absolutely endearing. I love the way she speaks when she tries to tell, James and the Giant Peach story. And so when she tells that, it is hilarious to listen to, and she's very proud of it. So I've got that auntie, and then the other one is who I call like the teacher who doesn't give A's. She's kind of tough exterior and yet a very warm heart. And once you break through, you have to earn it, right? We all know what that's like. And once you have her love, she is very protective and loyal, and she's in there for the long haul. And so that combination really helped make up Madame Marie.
Mm-hmm.
As the book went on, I came to understand a bit more about what your term good fortune means. Initially, you might think, well, good fortune, that's luck. In this case, that's not luck. This good fortune is earned. The other aspect of what you were saying, we lose sight, the way Hollywood often portrays, the pioneer women in this country had a profound influence. They did virtually everything the men were doing by their side or when the men passed on their own. Raising crops, raising kids, farming.
Yes.
Everything. The pioneer women are profoundly
Yes, led very
crucial.
hard lives, very strong, determined, yes.
Good fortune, in this case, is earned. What I noticed, the good fortune is what Celia created
It was.
by her determination,
Right. Yeah.
by her imagination, her intelligence.
Quite amazing, yes, the kind of person you wrote about. Now, in your other books that you've written, I mean, she was such a strong person in this book. Your other books, I'm looking at the book behind you there. It's something, The Truth We Hide? No. What is the name?
The Way We Hide?
The Way We Hide. Strong characters, I imagine, in all of your pieces of fiction. Yes. And your books are all based on, you specialize in historical fiction, and you write primarily about the Depression, World War II. What are some of the other topics in your books?
Yeah, those are primarily my time periods. I love writing about usually the early 1900s to the 1940s. So that's kind of my sweet spot. I've written about several stories that take place during World War II, but all of them extremely different. So it's when I come across a nugget of history that I think, how did I not know this? Everybody should know about this. When I discovered that there were roughly 200 non-Japanese spouses who lived in the internment camps voluntarily, I thought, especially being half Japanese, I thought, how did I never hear about this before? So I found that fascinating. Then moved on, and wrote also about illusionists. In my case, With the Ways We Hide, about a female illusionist who works she gets recruited by MI9. And that was the British intelligence group, like MI5 and 6.
What
But MI9 is what I call the go-go gadget team of British intelligence. And that they created escape and evade devices to help the POWs, Allied POWs escape by sending tools and escape devices through everything you can think of, from Monopoly boards to cribbage boards and chess pieces, even like parts of a radio that you could put together and create a full radio by putting the pieces into 3 different baseballs. So this is what they sent in care packages.
Oh, this is
many of them
quite
escape.
fascinating information, and I hope our readers will explore some of those. I have one last question for you. You talked about the difference between Oriental and Asian. Would you explain that to our viewers?
Oh goodness, it's so funny because my mom, of all people, who was married until she passed away just recently. She was married, of course, to my father over for more than 50 years, being an immigrant from Kyoto, and yet it wasn't until I think it took her many decades for me to finally correct her, and all lighthearted, and we would giggle about it. And she would even say, because it's such an old-fashioned term of saying, this Oriental gentleman or whatever. And I remember distinctly saying, "Mom, repeat after me." And I put this in my book. I think I put in the epilogue, and it said, "Repeat after me. Oriental are rugs, Asians are people."
I love that.
And she would giggle over it, and of course we knew that her intention was not ill.
Right.
So she meant well, and it was a matter of where you go, oh, that's right, terminology changes, intent.
That's right, it does.
Behind so much of it, and so I think it's good to give people grace too.
What are you working on now?
Well, I can tell you that I'm working on another historical. Very excited to share details. I just can't yet, or my agent editor will get very upset because it won't be out for a bit. But it is the early 1900s. It takes place in California. And it is, I will say, a story idea that I have had percolating for at least 8 years when I came across a nugget of history that I cannot wait to share. So I will circle back. Hopefully I can come back and visit you when I have more to share on that topic. In the meantime, I'll say that I'm just going to be touring again. So I've got to be home for a bit. I'm going to be writing, and then I'll be out on the road again, which I have been for kind of on and off for months. So if you just check my website or my social media, I'll be sharing all the cities I'll be stopping through again. So if you're around that area, I'd love to see you.
I hope we will.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing today and being on our show. We enjoyed you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us today for Eyes on Books. We had a wonderful time visiting with Christina McMorris. We'll see you again soon.